If you want to know how a marriage really works, watch a man dress for a room you are not invited to enter. Keith stood before our hallway mirror in his Tom Ford suit, the jacket slung over a chair like a crown waiting for a head, and said, "Employees only tonight, Ev. It's complicated." Complicated? I used to plan donor galas that needed seating charts like geographic puzzles. Complicated was 20 floral trucks on one loading dock at dawn, but I didn't say that. I sat on the bench by the coat tree, fastening a pearl earring with the steady care of a surgeon. "I'm not an employee," I said, soft and even, "and not a problem." He mistook softness for surrender the way some men mistake volume for truth. "You know how you get," he said, angling his chin to check his profile. He had shaved twice. I could tell by the neatness along his jaw and the faint sandalwood on his skin. He hadn't used that cologne once since last spring, not even on our anniversary dinner. "Corporate politics can be rough," he said. Well, you can be too emotional." There it was, a label pinned like a name tag I hadn't asked for. I smoothed the hem of my navy sweater and watched him fuss with his tie. "Tell me," I said, "what flavor of emotional are we avoiding tonight? Proud wife? Bored spouse? Woman who knows where the bodies are buried?" He laughed a little too loud. "It's just a payroll recognition thing. HR, employees." He stepped closer, aiming for a kiss. I turned so it landed on my cheek. He pretended not to notice, because ignoring is an old dance move between people who think they're better off not hearing the music. "Right," I said. "Payroll. The tux says spreadsheets." "It's not a tux." He reached for the jacket, lifting it with 2 fingers like a museum curator. "It's modern. You used to appreciate details." "I still do." I watched him slide one cuff into the sleeve and then the other, slow as a magician hiding a scarf. That's why I notice when the details change. He glanced at me, a quick scan, then looked back to the mirror. "Don't start." I didn't. I folded one knee over the other and made my voice gentle, almost warm. "You did when you said employees only." Keith turned, arms open, performance ready. "Look, investors will be there. There's a lot of noise around a pilot we're launching next quarter. It's not a bring your spouse scene." "I see," I said. "And Marion Holt?" He blinked. "What about her?" "She tends to show up to anything with a step-and-repeat banner." Keith's mouth shaped a reluctant smile. "She's on the board. Different." Before we deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. "Different," I echoed, filing the word away like a receipt. His phone vibrated on the console table, humming against a marble coaster. He glanced at the screen, face smoothing into faux neutrality, then flipped it face down. "Car will be here in 5, he said. "Don't wait up." "I won't," I said. "I have a date with the laundry." He chuckled, relieved to locate a domestic script he recognized. "There's the Evelyn I know." He slid into the jacket, and for 1 second I remembered the first time I saw him across a conference room. Sleeves rolled, tie loose, that bright charm he wore like a medal. That was before charm turned into a shield. He opened the door, paused. "You look nice, by the way." "In a sweater." "In everything," he said, then left the house as if he hadn't just handed me silence as a form of management. I listened to the front door close and let the quiet expand. Then I crossed to the console and flipped his phone back over out of habit. Face ID, so it didn't unlock. Mine lay next to it. I picked up my own, opened the private page the company used for its inner circle, the one with glossy photo dumps and captions trying to sound casual. A smart consultant remembers where the informal channels live. That's where people brag without realizing they are building a case against themselves. The top post loaded. It was a selfie from Trent, Keith's assistant. A shot angled from below, so his grin looked larger than life. Behind him, the ballroom arch of the Harborview Hotel. To his right, Keith in that suit, arms slung around Nadia Bloom, her champagne glass lifted, her hair sculpted into the kind of wave that pretends to be effortless while costing as much as a minor appliance. The caption read, "Power couple back in action. Harborview gives us the view, we bring the sparkle." I didn't breathe for a count of 3. Then I noticed the reflection in the mirrored column behind them, a sliver of Marion's silver dress. She was there. Of course she was. And if Marion was there, then about half the city's donors were there too, all sipping and whispering and measuring proximity. Employees only, my foot. My phone buzzed with a text from Zara. "Don't forget our coffee tomorrow." I ignored the emoji she added because I was busy reorienting the map of my life. I tapped the image to enlarge. Nadia's hand on Keith's shoulder looked proprietary, the kind of touch that says the story is already written. Maybe it was. Maybe I had edited it down to a tidy summary because tidy stories are easier to carry. Another ping, comments stacking under the post, applause emojis, a few jokes, one too honest line from a junior analyst who probably thought he was clever. Thought she left PR 5 years ago? Guess not. I scrolled without haste. I wasn't going to dramatize this. Planning is my native language, and planning requires facts. First, I took a screenshot, then another in case someone scrubbed it. Then I scrolled Trent's feed for the last month. Flights, a boutique hotel in Austin, a photo of a shopping bag from a store Nadia consults for. People tell on themselves for free. You just have to archive it before they notice. I set the phone down and opened my jewelry box. The diamond set sat in a velvet nest like frost in moonlight. Keith once said it looked too much for work, which is why I wore it to 3 client meetings afterward and watched men have to blink before addressing me as if I were a chandelier instead of a person. I lifted the necklace and let it rest against my collarbone. It was cool, then warm. I smiled at the mirror without showing teeth. Before I could lose my nerve, I opened my messages and found Marion Holt. We weren't friends. We were co-conspirators in polite society, which is something else entirely. I typed, "You'll want to see who's hosting tonight." Then I attached Trent's photo. A bubble appeared immediately. Marion. Crown, car. Translation. I'm on my way, and I intend to sit in the good seats. Good, I said to the empty hallway. Let's see how complicated this is. I changed into a black sheath dress that fit like a contract, added the diamonds, and wrapped a silk scarf around my shoulders because the harbor view is always 15 degrees colder than it needs to be. Shoes next, sensible heels that still looked like I might be arriving from a stronger future. I gathered my hair into a low twist and slid on a shade of lipstick named, without irony, After Hours. I left the sweater folded on the bench like yesterday's version of myself. The rideshare smelled faintly of pine. The driver, a young guy with earnest eyes, asked if I had plans. Work event, I said. He nodded like we were sharing a universal secret about having to show up where you're half wanted. As we curved down to the waterfront, my phone binged again. Trent had posted a story. A slow pan across the ballroom, tables set with linen-like snowbanks, the stage dressed in LED blues, the skyline doing its best impression of a promise. Nadia appeared at the edge of the frame, laughing with someone just out of view. Keith's voice slid in from off-camera. Warm, pitch perfect. Let's make history tonight. Let's, I whispered. The Harbor View's valet line was a river of black cars and impatience. I stepped out, thanked the driver, and texted Marion. Arrived. She responded with a photo, her own reflection in the elevator, silver gown gleaming, smile sharpened. Under it, be generous with your entrance. Tonight is architecture. I walked through the revolving door and into air-conditioned Into Ambition. The lobby featured a floral installation so extravagant I knew the supplier by name without needing a tag. I could feel the weight of eyes turning as my heels clicked toward the ballroom. Not because I was famous, but because looking is a sport at events like these. Who arrives with whom? Who wears which signals? Who doesn't belong and who makes belonging look easy? I belonged. I had made a career of constructing that illusion for other people and then standing behind a curtain while they basked in it. Tonight, the curtain had slipped. Fine. Curtains are fabric. Fabric can be held aside. A staffer with a clipboard looked me up and down. Guest list? Evelyn Shore, I said. I'm with Marion Holt. The name did its job. The staffer's eyes widened, then softened. Of course, Ms. Shore. Welcome. A plastic badge appeared as if by magic. She clipped it to my scarf with an apologetic smile I pretended not to notice. Inside, light rippled across the ceiling like a digital aurora. Tables were numbered in elegant script. A photo backdrop hosted executives practicing their angles. On stage, a string quartet tried to be heard over the hum of networking. I spotted Marion near the center aisle, already holding court. She lifted her glass as I approached. I thought you had a quiet night in, she said, kissing the air beside my cheek. Laundry can wait. I squeezed her hand. You look like a headline. That's the plan. Her eyes glittered in a way no diamond could match. I saw the photo. I sent it. Precise. You always were. She stepped back to survey me. Are you steady? Absolutely. Then stand here, Marion said, guiding me to a spot where the aisle met the central table cluster, and watch our host make his entrance. Keith did, minutes later, to generous applause. He took the stage with his practiced stride, chin up, shoulders set just shy of arrogance. He held a note card like it was an afterthought. The quartet tapered, the house lights adjusted, the microphone found his mouth as if it knew where it belonged. Friends, he said. Colleagues, partners. He warmed the crowd with corporate poetry about innovation and community impact. I watched his hands, steady, open, trustworthy. I watched Nadia at a corner table, the smile she saved for photographers glued in place, her gaze skirting me the way people avoid the edge of a cliff in a painting. He didn't see me at first. When he finally scanned past Marion and spotted me, his voice skipped half a note. He recovered quickly, but recovery is a tell. I tucked it away for later. My phone vibrated against my palm. I glanced. Trent, again, going live. His stream counted up viewers. I tilted the screen so I could watch both the man and his mirror. "Tonight," Keith said, "we celebrate our team." He gestured toward table 6, and we look forward. A pilot next quarter, a new partnership. He paused. Someone very special helped position us for this. Nadia shifted, already preparing to stand if summoned. She had rehearsed the smile for this exact line. "Trent," Marion murmured, "is about to earn an accidental statue." Keith's eyes found mine again. I saw the calculation: retreat, advance, distraction. He took the third option. "But first," he said, "I want to thank someone who has supported me since the beginning." The room turned as one. He didn't say my name. He launched into a paragraph so general it could have thanked the concept of air. Nadia's shoulders dropped a fraction. She still smiled because cameras require it. Clarity arrived. This wasn't about romance. It was about narrative control. He would keep the picture wide and fuzzy as long as he could, and I had just walked in with enough focus to cut glass. "Ready?" Marion asked. "Wait," I said. "Let him finish his stanza." The applause came on schedule. He took a sip of water and prepared for the section about the pilot. I stepped forward. Marion didn't stop me. She angled her body so that when I reached the front row, she was a natural bridge. 2 steps, then 2 more. I lifted my hand, and the sound guy, bless his tired heart, read my intention and lowered the volume on the quartet's transition. Keith paused, puzzled. "Evelyn," he said into the microphone, trying to make it sound like a private aside. "Employees only," I said, and the audience laughed in a tidy, uncertain way that suggested they very much wanted to be on the right side of this moment. He forced a grin. "Wife's got jokes." "Wife's got receipts," I said softly, but the room is trained to hear soft things when they're pointed at a microphone. Nadia looked toward the exit like it was a lifeboat. Trent, still live, zoomed, then panned back, which made the live comments spike. Marion touched the stem of her glass, a tiny bell I recognized as encouragement. "Let's keep it moving," Keith said, attempting to reclaim rhythm. As you were saying," I cut in, "thank you to everyone who contributes to the Shore household, since company money has been such a generous donor lately. There are silences you earn and silences you steal. This one I stole." It wasn't a shout. It was a pin dropped from a great height that somehow hit the exact center of the table. Keith's face held a smile the way a dam holds water. "Not the time," he whispered off mic. "Agreed," I said into mine. "The time was when you told me employees only." I lifted my phone, turned the screen to the nearest camera, and let Trent's photo glow across the big projection behind us. Keith and Nadia, arm around shoulder, champagne halo, caption bright as a neon sign, power couple back in action. Gasps rolled across the room. On stage, Keith's jaw set into a stubborn line. Nadia stood, a chair leg scuffed. She leaned toward the aisle, then changed her mind and leaned toward the exit. She chose the exit. "Thank you for your attention," I said. "Please enjoy the evening. It's going to be educational." I handed the microphone back to the stand as if returning borrowed jewelry, and I walked off stage. Marion fell into step beside me. "Transparent," she said. "Crisp. You should teach a class." "Later," I said. "I have laundry." We reached the lobby. Behind us, the quartet tried to find a song that could smooth over a public lesson. I didn't look back. I wanted precision. I wanted a new map. "Car's outside," Marion said. "You're riding with me." "Tempting." I touched the diamond at my throat. "I have one text to send first." "To whom?" "The company account that pays the card bills." I smiled, but not with my mouth. "And to the board. Just a note on financial stewardship." Marion's eyes brightened. "Now that," she said, "is architecture." I typed the message in the crisp, neutral tone I reserve for contracts and holiday menus. I attached the screenshot, saved it again to a backup folder, and slid the phone into my clutch. The mirror on the lobby wall showed a woman I recognized and had somehow been underestimating. I lifted my chin and nodded to her like a colleague who had just delivered on time and under budget. Outside, the air tasted like rain. Marion's driver opened the door, and she slipped in with the grace of someone who never pays retail. I'll follow, I said. I need a minute alone before I'm not. She studied me. You're steady, she said. Always have been. People confuse quiet with weak. They won't anymore, she said. The door thumped shut, and her car moved off. I stood under the awning and felt the storm organize itself out over the bay. My phone buzzed once more. Trent, perhaps, wondering how to frame the last 15 minutes. He'd figure it out. I walked to the curb, raised my hand for a cab because it felt satisfyingly analog, and when one slid to a stop, I slid in. Home, I said. I loosened the scarf at my neck and pictured the next moves stacking like plates, clean and white and inevitable. By the time we turned onto my street, I had already written the subject line in my head. Please review tonight's personal expense filings before tomorrow's meeting. And because I am thorough, I added a second sentence for clarity, simple and cool as a glass of water. More documentation available upon request. At the front door, I paused, listening to the quiet that now sounded less like absence and more like space. I set the necklace in its velvet bed, sat at the kitchen island with my laptop, and began to write. The next morning, I woke before sunrise, not because of guilt or nerves, but because the quiet had changed shape. It wasn't the soft kind that drifts around a marriage when you both pretend to sleep late. It was the kind that means a plan has already begun. I lay there for a moment, tracing the line of faint light along the curtain, and thought about Keith's face when he saw me on that stage. There was shock, yes, but under it something else. Calculation stalling mid-stride. I made coffee, the real kind, dark roast with too much strength for an empty stomach. The aroma filled the kitchen like the first honest thing said after years of polite lies. I opened my laptop, checked my sent folder, and saw the email still sitting at the top, quiet and certain. Please review tonight's personal expense filings before tomorrow's meeting. It had been delivered to every board member, CC'd to the finance department, blind copied to myself. A perfect paper trail. I took a sip, scrolling the company's private page again. The selfie was gone, deleted overnight, but not before it had been shared, screen captured, and commented on across too many accounts to contain. Nadia's name trended in local feeds for a few hours, accompanied by speculative emojis and polite phrasing like strategic partnership. Corporate gossip is a polite form of excavation. People dig until they find something to bury you with. My phone chimed with a message from Marion. Breakfast at the Harborview Cafe? Let's make the morning productive. I replied, Give me an hour. When I arrived, Marion was already seated by the window, reading a folded newspaper with the elegance of someone who never checks her phone at the table. You caused quite the stir, she said as I sat down. I only showed up where I was told not to. Same difference, she smiled faintly. You realize you turned the live stream into a press release? Trent's hobby turned into documentation. I can't be blamed for his enthusiasm. Marion stirred her tea. You'll need to think about what comes next. Public sympathy evaporates fast, especially in this city. The board meets tomorrow morning. They'll want a narrative before Keith gives them one. I already started it, I said. The facts speak fluently. She tilted her head, approving. Still, polish helps. Come tonight. They're hosting a follow-up event, damage control disguised as charity. Cameras will be there. Appear calm, gracious, unintimidated. Nothing is more unnerving to a guilty man than a woman who looks untouched. I considered it. The same ballroom? Same lighting, same audience. Only the speeches change. Perfect, I said. By evening, the city had rinsed itself in rain. I dressed deliberately. Navy silk, gold cuffs, the faint scent of gardenia he once claimed he couldn't resist. I wasn't going to hide. I wanted precision, not camouflage. The Harborview glowed like a glass ship when I arrived. Inside, the lobby buzzed with polite urgency. Reporters clustering near the velvet ropes, interns juggling guest lists, the hum of soft jazz like a heartbeat someone was trying to steady. I caught sight of Keith across the room almost immediately. He stood near the sponsor backdrop, posture controlled, smile pre-measured. Nadia wasn't beside him this time. Apparently even opportunists know when to step out of frame. He saw me the way someone sees an unexpected reflection, startled, defensive, fascinated. He recovered quickly, turning to greet a board member, but I caught the flicker. It was enough. Marion materialized at my elbow. Lovely choice of color, she murmured. It reads serene yet unapproachable. That was the memo, I said. The MC called for attention, and the crowd shifted toward the stage. Keith stepped up to the microphone again, voice smooth as ever. Tonight, he began, we reaffirm our commitment to transparency and trust, values that have guided this company from the start. A murmur ran through the audience. Too soft to call disagreement, too restless to be support. I stood near the aisle, arms loosely folded. He spoke about growth, accountability, shared goals. Every buzzword landed with the faint echo of someone trying to rewrite a headline. Marion leaned closer. He's bleeding charm. Charm doesn't clot, I said. When he gestured for applause, I moved. The moment felt rehearsed, though I hadn't practiced a word. The aisle opened almost naturally, and the crowd parted, curiosity more obedient than security. I stepped up the small stairs, the click of my heels syncing with the soft percussion track still looping from the speakers. Keith turned, surprise flickering into disbelief. "Evelyn," he said, microphone still live. "This isn't—" "Relax," I said, taking the mic gently from his hand. "I only want to thank everyone for their generosity." The audience chuckled nervously, assuming humor. "You've all contributed," I continued, "to something quite personal. A fund, you could say, a marriage fund, since company money's been covering his ex's travel expenses." The laughter broke, though gasps replaced it. I could feel the air shift, an almost physical thing, as if the room had exhaled too fast. Keith froze. Cameras clicked. Someone near the bar dropped a glass, the sound sharp as punctuation. Nadia wasn't visible, but I knew she would be somewhere backstage, already strategizing a retreat. "Evelyn," Keith began, stepping forward, voice low. "That's enough." "Exactly," I said, turning slightly toward the audience. "Enough hiding, enough pretending? It's all very corporate, really. Creative accounting of loyalty." Marion lifted her glass from the front table. "To transparency," she said clearly. Trent's phone was raised again. I saw the red recording dot reflected in a chandelier prism. The live stream hadn't stopped. Somewhere an intern would be archiving this moment before dessert. Keith's jaw flexed. "You're embarrassing yourself." "No," I said, still into the mic, still calm. "I'm reminding everyone what partnership looks like when one party mistakes deceit for strategy." The word deceit landed like a stone into still water. Ripples of whispers followed. He reached toward me, probably to reclaim the microphone, but I stepped aside, letting the gesture hang there, a motion without contact. "I'll let you finish," I said, placing the mic back on its stand. "After all, it's your company, for now." I walked down the steps slowly, each one deliberate, the sound of my heels swallowed by the collective hush. Behind me, the quartet had fallen silent again, waiting for cues no one could give. As I reached the aisle, Marion joined me, her smile small but triumphant. "Well," she whispered, "that should keep the reporters busy." "Busy is good," I said. "It keeps them from forgetting." We passed the photographers, flashes bursting like tiny storms. I didn't flinch. Let them document composure. It ages better than scandal. Outside, the air was damp, charged. Marion's driver pulled up, door open, umbrella ready. "Where to now?" she asked. "Home," I said. "I need to think." "About Keith?" "About next steps. Emotions are temporary, strategy endures." She studied me for a moment. "You're colder than I expected." "Not cold," I said. "Clear." As her car disappeared into the drizzle, I stood under the canopy, the night alive with camera flashes and murmurs. I felt no shaking, no rush of triumph, just a quiet certainty expanding in my chest. At home, I poured a glass of water, set my phone on the counter, and watched the live replay. The video had already gone viral on business feeds, the caption reading, "CEO's Gala interrupted by wife's revelation." Comments scrolled fast, half sympathetic, half gleeful. Trent had messaged me privately, "You're trending. Also check your inbox, something you'll want to see." I opened the attachment. Screenshots of expense reports. Hotel invoices, boutique purchases labeled client engagement. Each document meticulous, time-stamped, and damning. The foundation of Keith's image had always been built on presentation. Now the scaffolding was visible, and it was cracking. I created a folder on my desktop titled Clarity. Inside it, I saved everything. Then I opened a blank email draft, typed in the board's group address, and wrote, "Please review the attached expense summaries prior to tomorrow's meeting. These appear to fall outside approved budget parameters." I read it twice, making sure every word was steady, professional, impossible to dismiss as emotional. Then I pressed send. The house settled around me with the small, satisfied sounds of night. Outside, thunder muttered along the bay, distant but approaching. I turned off the lights and let the dark hold its breath. Somewhere downtown, Keith would be calling his PR consultant, rehearsing explanations, blaming interns, reframing truth into something digestible. Let him. Every word he spoke now was being measured against what the world had seen with their own eyes. I went upstairs, folded the navy dress across a chair, and looked at my reflection in the mirror. My face looked the same, but something beneath the skin had shifted alignment, an old, quiet strength settling into place. Tomorrow would bring statements, lawyers, noise, but tonight belonged to the silence of plans already in motion. I turned off the lamp. "Good night, Evelyn," I murmured to my reflection. "You did well." The reflection didn't smile. It simply looked back, steady and certain, like someone who had just rewritten the rules. By morning, the city looked scrubbed, sidewalks rinsed by the night rain, and sky washed to a hard blue. I dressed for errands that didn't look like errands. Slate dress, low heels, a trench that meant business without saying it. I needed to move quickly and make it appear calm. The trick wasn't secrecy, it was steadiness. People wave off storms if you hold the umbrella like you were born with it. Zara's office sat on the 12th floor of a brick building that used to house a bank. Now it held boutique firms with polished names and reception areas that smelled faintly of eucalyptus. She met me in the hallway with a paper cup of coffee and a grin that actually warmed her very composed face. "You look ready," she said. "I feel organized," I said. "That's the same thing if you say it with conviction." She led me into a conference room with glass walls, then hit a switch that fogged them. "For effect," she said, tapping a folder. "And privacy." Inside the folder sat a set of recorded documents with neat stamps and digital confirmations. Deed transfer, homestead designation, a tidy note to the county clerk. "You own the house outright," Zara said, sliding a pen toward me like a ceremonial baton. "Congratulations." I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "How did you get him to sign this without reading?" "You organized it," she said. "I just kept the car in lane." She flipped to a signature page. "Remember the refi paperwork he rushed through before the pilot launch? You stacked these into that packet?" "He signs anything if you say closing window and put a bold line where a signature goes," I said. "Most executives do. Everyone's busy. That's how half my clients get in trouble and the other half get free." She leaned back. "You wanted to be ready. Now you are." I touched the paper, the weight of it surprisingly light. "I want to move fast on the rest," I said. "Cancel the joint lines. Freeze what's left. I don't want surprises." "We started pre-dawn," she said. "I had paralegals on hold for the banks at 6. The cards are flagged. The lines that require 2 signatures are locked pending review. Your individual account is separate and already protected." She slid another sheet across the table. "These are the confirmations." I scanned the printouts. Account numbers, case IDs, a set of banal phrases that, together, spelled safety. "What about the business card he sometimes slips into our personal file?" I asked. "The one he swears he only uses for dinners with investors, and yet somehow a boutique candle shop in Soho recognizes the number?" "Different animal," she said. "But the board will care about that. Are you ready to talk to them?" "I sent the email last night." I looked up. "You'll come with me?" "I'll be in the building," she said. "I don't need to sit at the table unless they try to perform procedure instead of practice it." I smiled. "They will." "Then I'll arrive in 5 minutes after they start talking in circles," she said. "It's a hobby." We moved through the rest like a checklist: car title, insurance updates, reassigning the household utility accounts to my name, not because he would cut power to be spiteful, but because people make petty moves when they feel cornered, and I wanted to preempt them. Every call was a script, polite, precise, boring. Boring is a ladder in a crisis. You climb it and avoid the show. "Anything else?" Zara asked. "Trent," I said. "He sent screenshots last night. I want to talk to him directly." "Be careful," she said. "Assistants are fountains when they're ignored and vaults when they feel seen. He likes attention. Give him structure." "I know his type," I said. "He posts like a publicist and gossips like a stagehand. He'll talk." I was about to dial when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I answered because I love surprises when I've already mapped them. "Evelyn?" a male voice said, half whisper, half performative sigh. "Trent," I said. "Oh, good. You have my number saved," he said, relieved. I called from my personal. They, keep an eye on the company line now. Them being legal, and Keith, and that PR person he calls a family friend who keeps telling him to say, "We value accountability." It's chaos in there. "You sound energized," I said. "You know how it is," he said. "The air changes. You can smell it. I've been making copies all morning." "Copies of what?" "Expense reports, travel approvals, those little authorization emails no one thinks about because they say approved in the subject line." Papers shuffled on his end. Also, I found a thread where Nadia sent him her boutique invoices, and he forwarded them to our finance manager with cover under client engagement the EX. It's all very Convenient. I'll need those, I said, and timestamps. Already on the PDFs, he said, brightening. I learned that from you. You did a seminar once for the spouses group on how to track logistics without making a scene. I took notes. I didn't know you were there, I said. I wasn't supposed to be, but nobody notices assistants at those things unless they need coffee, he said, then lowered his voice. Evelyn, he keeps blaming Matt in accounts. Says interns misfiled. It's getting ugly. I prefer revealing to ugly, I said. Email the documents to the address I'll text you. BCC yourself on a personal account so you keep a record. And Trent, if anyone asks, you're complying with a board inquiry. Trent made a pleased sound. That's smart. It's simple, I said. Smart comes later. We hung up. I texted him a fresh address I had created last night, a clean catch-all named with a dull string of numbers. Then I looked at Zara. He's going to send a fire hose. She nodded. We'll make a river and root it where it belongs. Before lunch, it began. Attachment after attachment, chimes pinging my phone in a steady rhythm. Hotel chains in 3 cities, a boutique in Palm Beach that sold styling services, flights to a conference that didn't appear on the official company calendar, meal receipts that read like date night menus, but with the tip line filled with a flourish that matched Keith's signature. I saved everything to the Clarity folder and mirrored it to an external drive because I value redundancy almost as much as I value elegance. At noon, Marion called. How's our architecture? Structural integrity is holding, I said. We're shoring up the foundation. Keith has been on calls since 8, she said. I know because 3 of those calls were to my house, and I did not pick up the first 2. On the 3rd, I told him to speak to the board secretary like any other executive. He's not accustomed to hearing the word procedure without being the one to use it. Thank you, I said. Don't thank me, she said. I dislike hypocrisy, and I dislike sloppy hypocrisy even more. Are you ready for tomorrow? I will be, I said. Give me the afternoon. Take it, she said. And Evelyn? Yes? Wear navy again. It reads as the truth even when people are trying to remember how to define the word. After I hung up, I took a breath, then called the bank manager whose card sits on our fridge behind a magnet shaped like a lighthouse. He answered on the first ring because my caller ID carries a house number he sends holiday cards to. Morning, Miss Shore. Good afternoon, I said. I'm calling to confirm the freeze on the joint line and to request written acknowledgement. You'll have it within the hour, he said. And, Miss Shore, if you'll allow one personal note. Well handled last night. I don't know what you mean, I said, smiling into my voice. Of course, he said, matching my tone. Email to follow. Zara watched me end the call and nodded. People love competence, she said. They don't know where to put it, so they admire it from a respectful distance. We worked through the afternoon. At 2, Trent sent a video file with no subject line. I hovered, then opened it. Keith's voice filled the room, captured during a car ride if the faint road noise meant anything. He was talking too fast. Just root it under client entertainment, he said to someone off camera. Everyone does it. If anyone asks, we'll say Nadia's advising on a rollout. Trent's text followed. Recorded from a ride to the airport last month. He put me on speaker while he checked in on another line. I was quiet. He forgot I exist when he multitasks. Zara and I listened again, then a 3rd time, this time as lawyers. Not illegal on its face, she said, but awful optics and very helpful with pattern and practice. You don't need a perfect tape. You need a woven one. This is good thread. Add it to the tapestry, I said. We stopped for 15 minutes to eat the sandwiches her assistant left outside the fogged glass. I noticed my hands had stopped trembling, which surprised me because I hadn't realized they were. I flexed my fingers and felt present in a way I hadn't in months. Your face relaxed, Zara observed. I've been holding a mask so long it forgot to ask permission, I said. She chewed, then said, You're past the point of indecision? That's when the mask stops being necessary. At 3, my phone vibrated with Keith's name. I let it ring, then silenced it. 10 seconds later, a text came through. Pick up. We need to align messaging. I typed back, Speak to the board. I've already aligned my facts. 3 dots appeared, vanished, returned, then disappeared again. No reply followed. I pictured him in his office, pacing, hair still perfect, tie loosened just enough to imply urgency on camera, telling people he had it under control. He always considered control a talent. I considered it a chore you do every day, no matter how you feel. At 4, the company's press account posted a statement. We take questions about expenses seriously. A routine review is underway. We remain focused on our mission. I showed Zara. She snorted. That's the kind of sentence that begs for a second paragraph, and they don't have one. They'll try to find one tonight, I said. By morning, they'll wish they had one 2 years ago. At 5, Trent called again, whispering as if he were hiding in a coat closet. I could hear the buzz of office voices, the hush of carpet swallowing steps. He called Nadia twice, he said. Voicemail. Then he told me to draft a statement that says she was consulting. He wants me to use phrases like historical partner and trusted advisor. I don't think he realizes that phrase makes everyone think of old gossip. What are you going to do, Trent? I asked. Draft exactly what he asked, then email it to myself with a timestamp, he said, surprisingly crisp. And send you a copy, BCC, in case he deletes it later. Good, I said. And Trent, make sure you go home on time. I don't think we have a time anymore, he said, attempting a joke, then softened. Thanks for thinking of it. We hung up. I looked at the pile of documents, now organized into subfolders labeled with dates and vendors. The neatness looked like calm even though it represented storm maps. I felt, not victorious, not yet, just ready. Preparation is a feeling if you allow it to be. At 6, I drove home. The house welcomed me in its usual quiet, a version of silence I like, the kind that belongs to walls and rugs and well-oiled hinges. I set my bag on the kitchen island and poured a glass of water, the simple ritual of it clearing the buzz of the day. My phone lay face up, notifications stacked, shares of last night's video, a blogger asking for comment, a private message from a donor's wife that read simply, finally. I ignored them. I opened the Clarity folder again and scrolled. The files weren't just evidence. They were a map of choices, each one justified in the moment by someone who thought the rules were for other people. I wasn't angry. Anger would have made me sloppy. I felt precise. I called my mother because she deserves the courtesy of hearing my voice before she sees my face on a sidebar next to an ad for watches. She answered on the second ring. Hi, honey, she said, and I wanted to cry for a second because the words sounded like old quilts and grocery lists and every car ride home from a childhood recital. I'm okay, I said. You'll see a thing. It's under control. She paused. Do I need to say anything to anyone? No, I said. Just tell anyone who asks that I have a good lawyer and a steady heart. That I can do, she said. Come by Sunday anyway. I'll make the lemon cake. Sunday, I said. And when we hung up, I felt oddly stronger, like a good meal taken in advance of a long walk. I answered Marion's text next. Anything you need me to add tomorrow? No, I wrote back. Just bring your presence. It moves the air. I do love moving air, she replied. Sleep. You'll want a clear face. I showered, braided my hair, set out the navy suit. I checked my bag, printed summaries, a sleek thumb drive with organized folders, a small digital recorder that fit in my palm, the one I've used at event walkthroughs when people try to deny they asked for 10 more spotlight cues. I set the recorder on the charger and watched the light turn green. Insurance within insurance. Keith called again at 9. I let it go. He texted a minute later, You made your point. Let's not torch the place. I stared at the words. The house deed sat in my bag. The bank confirmations waited in my email. The documents hummed on the drive like a quiet engine. It struck me that I wasn't interested in a fire. I was interested in a ledger finally balanced. We'll talk tomorrow, I typed, in a room with witnesses. He didn't write back. I slept like someone who had finally chosen a lane. No tossing, no rehearsing imaginary arguments, no bargaining with old sentences. Morning arrived clean. The board convened at 9 in a conference room that had seen 1,000 handshakes and was about to learn a new form of greeting. I arrived at 8:45 with a paper cup of coffee and the look of a person who had come to repair a fence. The receptionist nodded me through with that combination of sympathy and curiosity unique to people who work at the front of storms. In the lobby outside the boardroom, I found a chair, crossed my ankles, and read an article about hydrangea pruning on my phone. If anyone saw, they would underestimate me further. That's a public service. Keith burst from the elevator at 8:53, voice already a few steps ahead of his body. He didn't see me at first. He straightened his tie in the reflection of a window and walked toward the glass doors. When he caught sight of me, he stopped so abruptly that a junior counsel behind him almost collided into his back. You can't be here, he said. It landed as a reflex, not a rule. I'm in the lobby, I said. Calm down. I'm very calm, he said, loudly enough that calm took a leave of absence. This is a private meeting. Which you will attend, I said, and which will include a review of expenses. Also private, at least for now. He glanced around to see who was listening. Everyone was. You've hurt a lot of people, he said, picking a line from a playbook that relies on guilt as leverage. I've informed a lot of people, I said. The hurt is a byproduct of information arriving in a room that thought it could run on secrets. His mouth tightened. He took a step toward me, then another, hand lifting as if to make a point in the air near my shoulder. I stepped back, not because I was afraid, fear wasn't the thing in the room, but because I wanted distance for the audio. I pressed the small button on the recorder in my pocket, felt it hum to life, and let my voice drop so it would capture cleanly. Thanks, I said softly. Now I have that too. His eyes flicked to my hand, then to my face. He understood. He lowered his hand, rearranged his expression into something like civility, and opened his mouth to change the subject. Before he could, the board secretary opened the doors and called his name. Good luck, I said, standing. I don't need luck, he said. Then take honesty, I said. It travels better. He disappeared into the wood-paneled room. The door closed. I sat back down, set the recorder on my knee like a pea under a mattress, and took another sip of coffee. My hands didn't shake. At 9:15, Zara texted, I'm in the building, 2 floors down. Ping when they stall. At 9:28, Marion texted, they're already on my third mention of optics. Prep your calm stare. At 9:32, Trent sent a message I will treasure longer than any diamond. They're projecting your email on the screen. The CFO is drinking water like it's the cure for everything. You are a legend on Slack, and I say that with respect. The minutes walked past in neat shoes. A courier brought me a fresh bottle of water. I thanked him and checked the small, glowing numbers on my recorder. They rolled forward like a second hand that believed in itself. At 9:50, the doors opened. A board member with perfect hair and an unfortunate tie stepped out to speak with someone from legal. His eyes slid across me and then did a double take, like a man recognizing a landmark he once drove past without noticing. He nodded. I nodded back. Courtesies matter, even at the edge of an audit. 10 minutes later, Keith emerged. He didn't look at me at first. He looked at his phone, at the carpet, at the receptionist's plant, at anything that wasn't a person who knew him. Finally, he turned. You could have told me, he said. I did, I said. For a year, in small ways and large. You heard me the way a person hears the weather report in a city known for sun. He stared like he was trying to remember a script and couldn't locate his place. You ruined me. No, I said, keeping my voice level. You did that when you told me I wasn't invited. He flinched almost imperceptibly. Then he rallied. You really think you're going to come out of this looking good? I don't need to look good, I said. I need to be accurate. Security approached, not aggressive, just present, 2 people whose job it is to escort moments toward their proper doors. Mr. Shore, one said, they need you back inside. Keith glanced at me, waiting for a crack, a plea, a hint of the woman who used to smooth everything so both our lives glided. I gave him nothing but blueprint lines. He went back in. The doors closed again. The recorder hummed on my knee. Outside the window, the rain had returned, thin and bright, stitching the light to the glass. Cars moved through it like thoughts in a careful brain. I checked my bag one more time, not because I needed to, but because touching the prepared things calmed the part of me that still sometimes hoped charm could be useful. At 10:33, Zara appeared at the end of the hallway, her stride unhurried, her expression set to polite inquiry. She nodded to me once, a small bow of allies on a quiet battlefield that had nothing to do with weapons and everything to do with paper. Ready? She said. Very, I said, standing. We walked toward the door together. The board secretary saw us and didn't try to block the way. Procedure, after all, is a door that opens for anyone who knows the handle. Inside, the projector glowed with a slide that showed a list of transactions, neatly itemized, dates aligned like truths. The CFO cleared his throat. Marion met my eyes across the table and lifted one eyebrow, a private toast. Keith looked down at his notes like a student who had discovered the test-covered chapters he never opened. I didn't sit yet. I stood at the end of the table, hands folded, voice steady. Good morning, I said. Thank you for taking the time. I'm here to help. The head of the board gestured to a chair. Ms. Shore, he said, we have some questions. I have some answers, I said. And I did. The boardroom had the crisp chill of a place that worships control. Light from the high windows broke against the polished table, scattering across a dozen faces that pretended neutrality. I took my seat beside Zara. She uncapped a pen, poised like a quiet witness. Across from us, Keith kept his gaze fixed on the bottle of water in front of him, as though the label might provide escape instructions. Marion cleared her throat. Before we begin, she said, I'd like to note that transparency was last night's theme. Let's maintain continuity. The hint of amusement in her tone earned a few polite smiles, the sort executives use when they're deciding whether to applaud or distance themselves. The CFO adjusted his glasses. Mrs. Shore, your correspondence included several attachments regarding expense discrepancies. We've reviewed them. Good, I said. Then you already know the numbers don't lie, even if people do. A few heads turned toward Keith. His jaw tightened. You're twisting things, he said. Nadia was consulting. It was all approved. Zara spoke before I could. Approved by whom? She asked, her voice steady and polite. Keith's hand twitched. The finance department. Those signatures, Zara said, sliding a printed sheet forward, are dated 3 days after the expenses occurred, and the approving officer was out of the country. The silence that followed wasn't shock. It was calculation. The collective pause of a group deciding how to adjust allegiance without getting their shoes wet. Marion leaned forward, her jewelry catching the light. Keith, she said softly, the board takes misuse of funds seriously, especially when donor money is involved. I know, he said too quickly, but this is exaggerated, a misunderstanding at worst. Then you won't mind us verifying everything, she said. He opened his mouth, closed it, and looked at me. You really think this fixes anything, Evelyn? You humiliated me in front of half the city. Congratulations. I didn't humiliate you, I said. You just don't like mirrors. He glared, the kind of glare meant to shrink me back into the old role, the accommodating wife, the buffer between him and consequence. But that woman was gone. I sat still, hands folded, waiting. The chairman cleared his throat. We'll need to suspend certain privileges while this is under review. Company cards, vehicle access, discretionary accounts, standard procedure. Keith's voice went hoarse. You can't do that based on her word. It's not based on her word, Marion said. It's based on documentation. She simply had the sense to collect it before we did. The meeting ended without applause. Keith left through a side door, trailed by legal counsel. I lingered long enough to exchange a nod with the chairman and a knowing smile with Marion. When I stepped outside, the sun hit the glass facade, dazzling enough to sting. Down in the parking garage, Keith waited by my car. His tie was gone, his shirt half unbuttoned, that familiar charm now cracked around the edges. You think you've won, he said. I think I stopped losing, I said. He stepped closer, anger pulsing just beneath his skin. You ruined everything we built. We didn't build it, I said. I held it up while you decorated it. He took a step forward, voice low. You love this. The attention? I shook my head. What I love is truth, even when it's inconvenient. He raised a hand in frustration, stopping inches from my shoulder. I didn't flinch. I simply tilted my head, eyes on the small recorder in my purse, its light already blinking. Thanks, I said softly. Now I have that too. His hand dropped. For a moment he looked almost human, confused, frightened by the realization that charm no longer worked here. Security appeared at the far end of the row, alerted by motion. He turned away before they reached us, walking fast toward the exit, a man trying to outrun his own story. I got into my car, started the engine, and drove home under a soft drizzle. The city shimmered on the windshield, street lamps stretching into golden threads. It felt like applause, muted but sincere. The next days unfolded like a carefully timed performance. Keith's team released statements about unfortunate misinterpretations. I responded to none of them. Silence is louder than defense when people expect you to explain yourself. By midweek, headlines shifted tone. Energy Tech CEO faces audit amid expense allegations. Reporters quoted anonymous sources. Marion's Friends in Society columns shared my calm photograph leaving the boardroom, captioned, Mrs. Shore remains poised. Keith tried to spin control. Anonymous accounts began posting stories about my temper, about my supposed interference with his projects. I knew the fingerprints. His PR consultant's syntax was as distinctive as perfume. Zara advised patience. Let the noise rise, she said. It makes the signal sharper. So I built a new signal. Trent helped. We met in a coffee shop 2 blocks from the office. He looked nervous, tapping the lid of his cup like a metronome. Do you have everything? I asked. Everything, he said. Invoices, recordings, even the HR memo where they quietly moved a complaint off the record. I handed him a flash drive. Save this online, private folder. If anything happens to your account, it's safe. He nodded. You're scarier than you look. I'm not scary, I said. I'm organized. That night, I stayed up compiling a short video, a montage. It opened with clips from the Gala. Keith's speeches about integrity and trust, followed by stills of expense documents and the caption, "Integrity, priceless." I posted it from a new account under my full name. Within hours, Marion shared it with the caption. Finally, a definition that makes sense. Other executives' spouses followed. The post trended before sunrise. Keith's response came in waves, lawyers sending vague warnings, his supporters trying to shift blame, Nadia suddenly posting nostalgic photos with captions about misunderstood loyalty. She underestimated the internet's appetite for contradiction. Someone dug up the boutique invoices within a day, matching dates to the company card statement. The comments turned savage in the polite way of corporate gossip. Sharp phrasing, impeccable grammar, no mercy. Zara called. "He's cornered," she said. "Don't gloat. Stay still. Let him walk into the next move by himself." "What next move?" "He'll come to you," she said. "They always do, to reclaim control, to apologize, to negotiate the narrative. Be ready." She was right. It happened on a Friday night. Rain again, steady and deliberate. I was folding laundry, real laundry this time, when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole I saw him, soaked, tie gone, eyes unfocused. "Evelyn," he said when I opened the door an inch. "Please." "I thought you preferred employees-only events," I said. He managed a weak smile. "You've made your point?" "Not yet," I said. He exhaled hard. "I'm losing everything. Do you understand what that feels like?" "I do," I said. "You taught me." He looked at me for a long time, the kind of look that tries to summon the past as leverage. "You don't have to destroy me." "I'm not destroying anything," I said. "I'm simply holding the light steady so people can see what's already there." He pressed his palm against the doorframe, his voice cracking between regret and arrogance. "You'll regret this." "Doubtful," I said, and closed the door. The latch clicked with the softest finality I'd ever heard. The following week, the audit began in earnest. I didn't attend. I didn't need to. My presence was already built into the evidence. Marion kept me updated in short, delighted texts. His face when the chairman said, "Termination clause." Wish you'd seen it. Reporters camped outside the office. Keith tried to walk past them, chin up, but the flashbulbs caught the tremor at the edge of his composure. By evening, headlines confirmed what everyone already knew. Contract terminated pending investigation. I watched the live stream from my living room. The same ballroom, the same cameras, only now the stage looked smaller, the lights harsher. Nadia stood near the exit, pretending invisibility. When Keith tried to deliver his final remarks, the moderator interrupted to play a recording, his own voice admitting, "We used company funds because the board's too stupid to notice." The room erupted. He froze, realizing the echo had finally outshouted him. I turned off the screen. There was no pleasure in the fall, only balance. Some things don't require applause. They require stillness. Later that night, Marion called. "He's finished," she said. "I know." "What will you do now?" "Whatever I want," I said, quietly. I walked to the window. The city glowed, clean and wet. Every reflection double. For the first time in years, my own reflection didn't look like a supporting role. It looked like a beginning drawn in ink. The glass no longer felt fragile. It felt clear. And in that clarity, I finally exhaled. Audit morning felt like the calm at the center of a long, careful breath. I brewed coffee, laid out my navy suit, and packed the same tools I used to build other people's triumphs: charger, summaries, flash drive, recorder, water, keys. No sparkle. Aim. The harbor view looked like a ship at harbor, flags lowered, engines quiet. Cameras lined the steps. I kept walking. Inside, staff moved with the brisk grace of people who had rehearsed this. The ballroom doors stood open. Rows of chairs faced a stage dressed in neutral tones, a backdrop of the skyline translated into geometry. Inventory, not celebration. Marion met me near the aisle. "You're early," she said. "I prefer to watch the room assemble." She slipped me a card. "Front row, center left." "Principals sit in front," she murmured. Zara arrived with her tablet. Press list doubled. Speak only when asked. If reporters crowd, smile like someone's telling you a long story about their dog. "I can do that," I said. Keith entered 20 minutes before start, trailed by counsel and the PR consultant. He wore navy too, a choice that once would have matched me. Today it looked like mimicry. He saw me and tried on a smile that used to open doors. It didn't. Lights softened. The chairman gave a brief, careful preface about standards and trust. The audit team began. Dates, vendors, approval chains, no raised voices. The document spoke as numbers do when you let them finish a sentence. Ms. Shore, the moderator said. Materials? I stood, handed him a flash drive labeled in block letters. Expense summary, source files. No theatrics. He loaded it. The screen behind us filled with a timeline, hotel charge on Gala night, boutique invoice marked styling consult, client engagement, internal email with approved in the subject line at 1:12 a.m. Mr. Shore, the moderator asked. Business purpose? Advising on messaging, Keith said. Travel supported that. Contract? It lagged. Disclosure of personal relationship? There isn't one. A murmur skimmed the room. The moderator lifted a hand. Exhibit 4. Audio. Keith's voice smooth and hurried. Just wrote it under client entertainment. Everyone does it. If anyone asks, we'll say she's advising on a rollout. He leaned toward his mic. Taken out of context. Let's add context, the moderator said. Second clip. Use company funds. The board never notices. Zara underlined the time code. I kept still. Not triumph. Alignment. Keith swallowed water. Casual remarks, he said. We were brainstorming. One more exhibit, the moderator said. The screen showed a short caption sequence I had assembled. Keith at the gala saying integrity, then a transaction log, then a calendar note labeled Palm Beach, personal. No soundtrack. Dates, vendors, amounts. The room didn't move. Questions followed from the committee. Why after-the-fact approvals? Why weekend vendors? Why list a private boutique as client engagement? Keith answered, revised, consulted counsel, rerouted. The pattern revealed itself like a map held to the light. At last, the chairman leaned in. Mr. Shore, in light of the record, this board is terminating your contract for cause, effective immediately. We'll refer the matter for external review. The sound that followed was a slow release, like a heavy box set down. Keith stared at the table, then at me, then at the doors. Nadia, half behind a pillar, slipped away without a word. The moderator opened a short press session. A reporter pointed a mic at me. Do you feel vindicated? I feel accurate, I said. Another. Should this have stayed private? It did. For months, I said. Privacy grows flowers and mold. When no one opens a window, you take the room outside. Will you bring personal claims? My attorney will advise, I said, and Zara gave the smallest nod. Keith tried the mic. I'd like to clarify. The session is concluded, the chairman said, voice polite and closed, chairs scraped. Conversations rose in careful clumps. Marion reached me. That was restraint as art. Thank you for the seat, I said. You wrote the script, she replied. We moved toward the doors. Keith stepped from a side corridor to block my path. Evelyn, he said, reaching for a tone that once worked. We need to talk. We just did, I said, walking. You've made your point. Not yet, I said softly. Next time, invite your wife. He stopped. I kept going. The lobby met me with ordinary noise, footsteps, phones, the soft rhythm of a hotel living 100 lives at once. Outside, a reporter asked, What will you do now? Lunch, I said. Then I'll consider what deserves my time. Marion's car eased to the curb. Soup? She asked, holding the door. Soup, I said. During lunch, she said, You'll get offers, panels, interviews. Maybe someday, I said. Today I want to be a person in a booth eating soup. You have a talent for deflating myth, she said, pleased. Back home, I hung the suit and set my heels side by side. The house held a new quiet. No tension, just space. I opened a window. On the island, I wrote a list. Change locks. Schedule a pickup for things I no longer want. Send thanks. Zara, Marion, the bank manager, the Harborview staffer who treated me like I belonged. Wear the diamonds only when it pleases me. The bell rang. Trent stood on the stoop, clutching a brown envelope. I won't stay, he said. Hard copies, just in case. Also, I'm giving notice Monday. Good, I said. Find a job where crises mean spilled toner. He laughed, surprised. You changed how I think about work. You paid attention. That's rarer than charm. After he left, I rested my forehead against the door, just to feel the cool wood and the reality of a house that answered to me alone. At 4, Zara called. The formalities sounded exactly as expected. Termination final, severance withheld pending calculations, audit forwarded for external review. The board's statement used stewardship 3 times. We scheduled next week's errands in plain sentences. Evening softened through the windows. I set water to boil and wrote a single line on a fresh page. Build something that doesn't require a stage. The kettle whispered. I poured tea and watched color thread the cup. My phone lit with a last alert. Contract terminated. Interim leadership appointed. I silenced it, placed the phone face down, and let the quiet stand. On my counter, the recorder lay where I had set it that morning. I pressed play and listened to the muffled room tone from the ballroom, then the moderator's calm cadence, then my own answers. I don't enjoy hearing my voice, but this time I listened as if I were reviewing a client walkthrough, where the pauses land, where a chair scraped, where a small laugh bubbled and died at the edge of a sentence. It wasn't vanity, it was documentation, the habit that kept my hands steady. For a long minute I stared at the thumb drive set beside the sink. It was one of those small, forgettable devices you can lose in a handbag seam. Yet the thing had held a year's worth of choices. That felt instructive. Great dramas collapse down to file names and timestamps. And once they do, people stop arguing about tone. The door between kitchen and hall creaked. I made a note to oil the hinge. It struck me as a good metaphor for the coming months. Fix small things as they announce themselves. Don't wait for a grand renovation. I cleaned the counter, wiped the table, folded the dish towel. My life needed ordinary care, not a victory tour. Messages stacked as the afternoon wore on. A former client wrote, "If you ever want to build something with structure again, call me." A foundation director asked if I would consult on a gala with fewer speeches and more honesty. My mother sent a photo of the lemon cake cooling on a rack. I replied to her first. Then to the client, "Next week, Tuesday." The foundation could wait. I was done with rooms full of speeches for a while. I took the diamonds from the drawer and held them up to the window. The stones caught the late light, scattering it into tidy sparks on the wall. Keith once said they were too much for work. He had meant it as guidance. I heard it now as limitation. I set the necklace back in its box and closed the lid with a small, decisive click. Dusk edged in. I stepped onto the back porch and breathed the cool evening. The neighbor's dog barked once and settled. A child down the block laughed, a sound as steadying as a lighthouse when you're watching for the inlet. I thought of all the times I'd sat in this spot waiting for texts that said "running late," as if the words were neutral and not a slow subtraction. No more waiting. My calendar would be a place for things that actually happened. Inside, I drafted a brief note to the board secretary. "Thank you for the orderly conduct of today's session. Please confirm receipt of the exhibits and chain of custody log. 2 sentences, no flourish." I hit send and felt the small satisfaction of tidy lines. The house made night sounds, heater breathing, a branch tapping the glass, the fridge clicking as it changed its mind about effort. I liked those sounds, and no glass slippers, no spotlight, just a home earning its name one useful noise at a time. Before bed, I opened the Clarity folder one last time and changed its name to Archive, not because I was putting it away to forget, but because it no longer needed to sit on my desktop like an alarm. The work was done. The rest was maintenance. I brushed my teeth, set an alarm for a gentle hour, and turned out the light. In the dark, I could almost hear the ballroom again. The hush after the chairman spoke, the shuffle of chairs, the whispered questions. Will this change anything? It already had. It had changed me, not into someone harder, but into someone who had stopped negotiating with her own certainty. Morning would come, and with it keys changing hands, locks turning, a list crossed off one steady line at a time. No parade, no coda, just work worth doing. The curtain had come down, not with spectacle, with accuracy, and that was enough.